Hey friends, today I want to share a story that might tug at your heartstrings and even bring a tear to your eye. It's a tale about how one small but incredibly brave bobcat saved a lonely elderly woman from cunning con artists. If you've never heard of a bobcat, it's a wild feline native to North America. It roams through forests and grasslands, a solitary creature with thick fur, round expressive eyes, and a perpetual grumpy look. But don't let that face fool you. This little cat is capable of real heroism. This heartwarming and dramatic story took place in a remote little town. So grab a cup of tea, get comfy, and let me take you on this unforgettable journey. There once lived an elderly woman named Mary Thompson in a tiny rural town. She was in her 80s and life hadn't been kind. Her husband had passed away 2 decades ago, and her children had long moved to distant cities, leaving her alone in a weathered wooden house on the edge of town. The house had a sagging porch and small windows through which she stared at the empty street every day. Her eyes held such deep sorrow that even the prairie wind seemed sadder around her. Mary had a kind heart. She loved knitting warm socks, though there was no one left to give them to, and making hearty soups that filled her home with comforting aromas. But loneliness wore her down. She often sat by the window, clutching an old family photo, whispering to herself. She longed for someone, anyone, to stop by, to ask how she was doing. She was as trusting as a child. A kind word made her believe someone truly cared. And one day that innocence was taken advantage of. 2 young men came to town, clean-shaven, dressed neatly, their smiles instantly warming Mary's heart. They knocked on her door and claimed they were from social services, running a program for seniors, offering free groceries and medicine. "Just sign right here, Mary," they said, handing her a stack of forms. Excited that someone finally thought of her, Mary's hands trembled as she signed each page without reading a word. She couldn't imagine these kind-looking strangers were scammers, planning to steal her home and savings. They left, promising to return with supplies, and Mary stood on her porch smiling after them. Now let's shift a couple of miles outside town into the tall grasslands. Among the wildflowers and rocky outcroppings lived a bobcat. Let's call him Toby. Of course, no one named him that, but it helps our story. Toby was young, curious, and a little bold. His thick gray fur made him look like a walking puffball, and his golden eyes could melt any heart. He roamed freely, hunting small critters and enjoying the wind in his whiskers. One day, Toby wandered into town. As he prowled along fences, taking in the unfamiliar scents, he spotted Mary through her window. Something in her lonely expression made him stop. Maybe it was fate, maybe something else. But Toby felt drawn to her. Mary noticed him and smiled, the first genuine smile in days. She opened the door and called softly, "Here, kitty. Come here, little one." Despite being wild, Toby sensed the kindness in her voice. He crept closer, then padded into her home. Mary reached into the fridge, pulled out a slice of cold meat, and placed it in front of him. Toby sniffed, tasted, and began to purr, a deep, rumbling purr that sounded like a tiny engine. From that day on, he visited her daily. They became close companions. Mary would stroke his soft fur, tell him stories of her youth, and Toby would curl up at her feet, content and watchful. Her world felt less empty with him around. Even the old house seemed warmer. But those 2 young men had no intentions of helping her. A few days later, they returned, claiming a small payment was needed to finalize her assistance, just a few $100s. Unaware of the trap, Mary pulled out her hidden savings from under the mattress, money she'd saved for emergencies, and handed it over. They took the money, thanked her with fake smiles, and promised to return the next day with food. Toby, lounging on the porch, noticed everything. He saw her hand over the money, heard the whispers and chuckles as the men walked away. His instinct screamed, something's wrong. Toby decided to follow them. Silently, he crept behind their car, memorizing their route as they drove off to a nearby town. He knew they wouldn't return, and that Mary had just been robbed. The next day came, and the men never showed. Mary sat by the window all day, waiting. Doubt crept into her heart. Did she do something wrong? Her frail hands shook as she poured tea, and tears welled in her eyes. Toby knew he had to act. He remembered the way, and despite the danger, he set off. Wind lashed his fur, brambles tugged at him, and coyotes howled in the distance, but he didn't stop. Mary needed him. Hours later, he reached the town. He found the scammer's place, an old apartment. The window was open, and with a graceful leap, Toby slipped inside. He began sniffing every corner, searching for Mary's money. Then he heard voices. The men had returned. Toby ducked under the bed, listening as they laughed about how easy it was to fool the old lady. "She didn't even read the papers," one said. "We'll take her house next." Toby had heard enough. With a sudden roar, as fierce a sound as a bobcat could muster, he sprang from beneath the bed, fur bristling, eyes blazing, claws bared. He was a storm in fur. He leaped at them, slashing and biting with wild ferocity. The men screamed, trying to fight him off, but Toby was too fast. In their panic, they bolted from the apartment, leaving the door wide open. Toby searched until he found a small duffel bag tucked in a drawer. Mary's money. He grabbed the handle in his teeth and dashed back through the window. He ran all night, no rest, no pause, just pure determination. As the sun rose over the prairie, a dusty, exhausted Toby stumbled into Mary's yard, the bag still clutched in his jaws. He dropped it at her feet and collapsed. Mary gasped, recognizing the bag. When she opened it and saw her money, tears streamed down her face. She scooped up the bobcat, cradled him gently, and whispered, "How did you do this, my little hero?" Toby purred softly, snuggling into her arms. From that day forward, they were inseparable. News of Toby's heroic deed spread through the town. People came by, some with peas, some just to chat. Mary's home came alive again, filled with warmth and laughter. And Toby? He sat proudly on the porch, keeping watch like the noble guardian he was. That, my friends, is the story of Toby the Bobcat, a little creature with a giant heart and unshakable courage. He didn't just save Mary from scammers. He gave her hope, friendship, and a reason to smile again. Let this story remind us, true heroes come in all shapes and sizes. And maybe, just maybe, we can all be a little more like Toby, brave, loyal, and ready to stand up for those who need us most. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and the people around you. And remember, there's a bit of hero in all of us.